This is part 4 of my reminiscences of historical events, and today we're going to talk about the Loma Prieta earthquake. This took place on October 17th of 1989, and it was a 7.1 earthquake on the Richter scale. We had moved from the Chicago area here to California in 1988, and then in the middle of September 1989 we bought our house, which we're still in today. And I had come home from work, from teaching, and I was doing some yard work in the backyard. At the same time I had the television on for the 5 o'clock news, and I had the volume on loud enough so that I could hear it out near the back screen door. Well, a few minutes after 5 o'clock, suddenly I started to feel dizzy when I was standing up. And my first thought was that I was either going to faint or that I was going to have a heart attack, because although I was standing still, everything seemed to be starting to spin around me. And I didn't know what to do, so I sat down for a few moments on the ground. And then on the television inside the house, I could hear the newscaster saying, "I believe we're having an earthquake here." And they went to the coverage of the World Series in San Francisco, which was going on at Candlestick Park. And the sportscasters there were saying, "Everybody, I believe we're having an earthquake here in the park." And I got up from outside and I walked into our house, and for about 20 to 25 seconds that strange sensation was felt. I noticed that the hanging lamp above our fish aquarium was slightly swaying, and then I noticed that the water in the fish tank was sloshing around slightly as well. So I walked past those and stood in front of the television and started to watch. And then they had reports coming in a few minutes later about damage in the San Francisco area. One of the spots that had been damaged was the marina area, which was built on sandy landfill right near the water's edge there in San Francisco. And some of the houses had collapsed, and some gas lines had broken and fires had started. Then the double-decker bridge, the Bay Bridge, a big section, I guess it must have been maybe 60, 70 feet long, collapsed from the upper level down to the lower level. And they had a helicopter doing live footage. Some of the drivers saw what was happening and they slammed on their brakes in time, but other ones went right off the edge and on the angle of the collapse segment and landed in the lower level there and were seriously hurt. I forget if any people were killed from that fall. It must have fallen maybe 25 feet. But they were going at speed, about 55 miles an hour. So after that, I left the TV on and I went outside, and a lot of my neighbors were out in the streets and coming out of their houses saying, "Did you feel that? Did you feel that?" And I said, "Yes, I have the TV on, and there was a big earthquake in the Bay Area." Of course, immediately people think that this is the repeat of the 1906 earthquake, and that the whole San Andreas Fault had busted loose. Shortly thereafter, I started to get telephone calls from family and friends who, as the news spread across the country, they wanted to know if I was okay and whether our house was still standing and so on and so forth. So I assured everybody that all was fine. Then my wife came home from her work, and she was talking about it as well, as she had listened to it on the radio. And again, coming from the Midwest for myself, we only have to worry about things like tornadoes and thunderstorms, but not earthquakes. So this was kind of a new thing for me and very disconcerting. The other thing that happened was, I believe it was the 660 freeway in Oakland across the bay, and a 2-block stretch of this double-decker expressway or freeway collapsed during this time, which was rush hour. The quake happened at 5:04 p.m. And people who were on the lower level were instantly killed. I believe it was over 60 cars were crushed. It happened so quickly that the people in the cars probably didn't feel anything, but they died instantly as their cars with them in it were collapsed to a height of maybe 2 or 3 feet. It was just a horrible thing. And then for the next several days, this was the national news and all sorts of photos and news coverage and eyewitness accounts came pouring in. Well, I wanted to go see some of this for myself and get some pictures. And so there were still aftershocks occasionally going on, although we didn't feel them here in Davis, California. But they warned people to, if they went to the area, to bring emergency supplies in case another aftershock came and they were trapped. So I told my wife I would just pop over there, I think it was like on a Saturday, and that I would come back, in a couple hours. And so I did take extra food, water, blankets, and clothing and first aid materials just in case. So I drove all the way down into the Oakland area, and I parked about a block away from the site of the freeway collapse, double-decker collapse, and I walked into the zone there, which had a chain link fence around it, but there was an area where you could still go in and see for yourself, and it was unbelievable. It was like seeing a bad movie, only it was horrific and real. And I believe it took like 6 months for the Caltrans people to take all the debris and rubble off using bulldozers and cranes, and finally they got the remains of the dead that were flattened in their cars. So it was a terrible sight, and certainly something I hope that we don't have to experience here again.